Hello there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. When two clones at the infamous 79's bar began talking about becoming whistleblowers against the Empire for their role in the destruction of Kamino, Vice Admiral Rampart sends an assassin to silence the problem. It's a completely different approach than the one taken by Emperor Palpatine in the last year of the Republic, when Fives accidentally uncovers the inhibitor chip's program's real purpose and also runs away to 79's. Palpatine, being the wiser individual, had framed Fives for attempting to kill him and was able to send the Coruscant Guard to apprehend and, if necessary, kill Fives. This was all above the board and non-clandestine. At least during the Republic period, Palpatine had to use the system to get rid of his enemies. Something he did better than most, but now that all of the checks and balances and regulations that prevented him from being all-powerful are gone, Palpatine's gone a bit lazy. The Empire is a bit lazy. Well, actually, Palpatine did run circles around everyone with the whole defense recruitment bill. He made Rampart look like the bad actor. He praised his enemies, Ryo Chuchi and Bail Organa, and even acknowledged their hard work to help him get exactly what he wanted to happen, the end of the Clone Trooper program. No, Palpatine is still as sharp as ever, but he would eventually lose his edge a bit more once he has the Death Star, which he thinks is like a solve everything kind of button. But Vice Admiral Rampart from the very beginning has been a bit sketchy. The man has plenty of ambition, but perhaps not enough intelligence and skill to carry out that vision, which makes him a dangerous individual, a relatively short-sighted individual prone to using dangerous shortcuts, like destroying Kamino with a fleet of ships crewed by clones. How did he not expect some clones to get angry over what he'd done to their homeworld? And then, of course, we have Admiral Rampart using these assassins, or assassin, known only as Clone X, to silence the Clone Trooper whistleblowers. That was also a pretty bad idea. And that's because when you employ assassins, especially against whistleblowers, it just makes everyone pay more attention to what the whistleblowers were doing. You really can't silence people in this manner, which is exactly what happens in this case. Senator Ryo Chuchi gets deeply involved in the case, and Clone X eventually makes a mistake and he gets captured by Captain Rex. So who is this clone assassin? In Star Wars Legends, we've seen Palpatine run several different specialized cloning programs to create specialized clone troopers for various roles that the Empire needed them in. One of my favorite parts of the Legends lore about clones was the inclusion of the Spartai clones. It actually made a lot of sense. Basically, the Kaminoan cloning process was too labor and time intensive. Sure, the clone troopers from Kamino were the best in the world, but for a fraction of the price, the Empire could field less capable clones that were still able to get the job done. And that's sort of where the Spartai cloning program begins. At the end of the Clone Wars, when the Republic was running out of money and time, they needed a cheaper way to build a larger military force, and the Spartai cloning cylinders, well, they could create a clone 10 times faster than the Kaminoans, which meant that in only 1 year, you could have a full-grown clone trooper. There were some differences in how they were trained, though. Instead of actually physically training them and giving them lessons, these clones were flash trained, which means that information was basically printed onto their brain. This, of course, led to a lot of problems and much less efficient and competent soldiers. As a matter of fact, a good percentage of Sparta clones would succumb to what was known as clone madness and basically become a danger to everyone around them, including themselves. The Spartai clones lacked independence and weren't really great at individual thought, which is what made them worse soldiers, but at the same time, they were extremely loyal to Emperor Palpatine, and that's what he needed at the time. My first reaction to the appearance of the assassin Clone X was that perhaps he was a Spartai clone. But then as we got to learn a little bit more about the character and we get to hear him speak, my opinion changed, especially after this conversation between him and Captain Rex.
Now you won't, Captain Rex.
So right away, this clone with no identification markers or anything like that, no numbers, he's identified Captain Rex, which is interesting. It's possible that Vice Admiral Rampart has told Clone X who Captain Rex is. Captain Rex is one of the most important and dangerous fugitive clones right now in the Empire. He's running around and gathering a network of clones who could very easily revolt against the Empire. But I would actually say this is very unlikely because Rex is actually listed as KIA after the Venator-class Star Destroyer who was on during Order 66 crashed into a freaking moon. For all intents and purposes, Captain Rex died a hero for the Republic and will be remembered as such in the archives. Vice Admiral Rampart has no idea that Captain Rex is alive, so I don't think he's the one who told this clone who the captain was. Now, Captain Rex has served in many different units, not just the 501st. A lot of clones will know him. But after seeing Clone X's facial expression and his mannerisms, I couldn't help but be reminded of a clone we were introduced to in the Clone Wars pretty early on, Sergeant Slick. Sergeant Slick betrayed the Republic during the Battle at Christophsis. He basically passed on information to the Separatists and also sabotaged a Republic base in exchange for credits. At the time, he had told Commander Cody and Captain Rex that he betrayed the Republic because the Republic had betrayed the clones by not giving them an option to fight or not fight. They were basically forced into war. Sergeant Slick definitely has a point about this, but betraying his brothers was seen as a terrible offense. Slick would be arrested, but his betrayal would be kept a secret away from almost everyone except for the High Command and the individuals who were involved in Slick's arrest. There was a fear that Slick's betrayal could act as sort of a contagion that would awaken all the clones to their unfair reality. This means to me that Slick was most likely ferried off to some supermax prison and thrown into a hole where he would never expect to see sunlight again. This places Sergeant Slick exactly in the right place to take part in some type of secret military mind control experiment being carried out by an ambitious Vice Admiral like Rampart. And if you listen to the voice samples that we have from Slick and the voice samples we have from Clone X, you'll see that they're quite similar.
You're too blind to see it, but I was striking a blow for all clones. You're fighting the wrong battle, brother. You're limited.
They even have a similar style of haircut, although I think that's a pretty popular haircut amongst clones. So how did the Empire turn a traitor clone like Slick into a fanatic believer of the Empire? An individual who'd carry out assassinations for the Imperial High Command, an individual who is now self-described as a
believer.
I mean, if this was Slick, he must have changed a lot. Remember, Slick betrayed his brothers for credits. You're telling me this is the same guy who was willing to kill himself to hide his Imperial masters? That part kind of made me think this wasn't Slick, maybe just another clone. But then, do you guys remember this scene from the first season of The Bad Batch? When the Bad Batch unit is detained and Crosshair is taken to a separate Kaminoan facility where his brain is essentially zapped by a high-powered energy field. This wasn't just torture for the sake of torture. This was actually a device that was designed to make the inhibitor chips in the clones' brains work even more potently, as in give the Empire more control and more docile soldiers.
While the chip is not as active as a standard clone's, the Order does appear to be working.
Can you intensify the programming?
Yes.
Then proceed.
Now, a clone like Crosshair, who is mutated, won't be affected that much by his inhibitor chip either way. But the Regs, they definitely will experience far more of a controlling effect. This machine that enhances the inhibitor chips could make the clones even more obedient. This machine is something that Vice Admiral Rampart would know about because of his connection to Tarkin. Rampart already viewed the clones as inferior and untrustworthy compared to regular soldiers, and so this idea of being able to mind control the clones would be very appealing to him. And because the clones weren't technically citizens of the Republic, they didn't have any representation, well, you could basically do whatever you wanted, whatever kind of crazy experimentation you wanted on these clones, especially someone like Slick, who's been thrown into prison for treason. I go as far as to say that this intermittent period when the clones are being phased out, it would make more sense for the Empire to create a new class of clones that have turbocharged inhibitor chips that will be completely loyal. These clones would play an important part in keeping the rest of the clone population docile during this transition from basically active duty to retirement. Other clones with turbocharged inhibitor chips could carry out terrorist attacks in major Imperial cities. This would really drive the public against the clones and kind of really make this new military recruitment act a lot more popular. This would basically all be classic Palpatine. Well, guys, that is my theory on how all of this is going to go down and who Clone X is. Let me know in the comment section below what you guys think. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy.